of learning. My name is Ms. Johnson. You guys all know me. In our second activity, well, first activity, whichever order you choose, we're going to be working on focusing our, our ideas on two different kinds of writing, realistic and fantasy fiction. Now, we haven't really done a lot of talking about the difference between these genres, so today I'm going to spend a little bit of time doing that. The first one we're going to look at is fantasy. So fantasy, here's some examples on this slide. You all know it: Lion King, Frozen 2, my favorite movie, Beauty and the Beast, The Lorax. They all have some things in common. Now, I know a lot of these are movies, but they're also books, and I know you probably have seen some of them. My class has seen The Lorax. The new Lion King just came out. Frozen 2 just came out on Disney Plus. So I figured you guys would know some of these, but they all have a couple things in common. One thing they have in common is that they use magic. For example, in Frozen 2, Elsa has magical powers. In Beauty and the Beast, there's a magical rose. In Lion King, it's kind of like the magical spirit in the sky. In the Lorax comes down from the ground or from the sky. Like, those things are magic. And sometimes it could also be like magical spells. It could be magical powers, magical talking objects. Speaking of talking, another one that these all have in common is talking animals. A lot of the times fantasy has talking animals. Like Simba is a talking lion. Like, you don't have talking lions. Olaf is a talking snowman. In Beauty and the Beast, you have the talking objects, but also the beast itself. The beast himself, he talks. And then in the Lorax is an animal, I'm assuming. I don't know what animal he is, but he's like an animal of sorts. And then you have mythical creatures. Those are like things like dragons and unicorns. Those things don't exist in real life, but you can have them in fairy tales and fantasies because it's just magic, you know? And then last but not least, you always have a big adventure with a really big villain. So I use down here the Three Little Pigs and the Big Bad Wolf, because the Big Bad Wolf is kind of like the big villain. And Frozen, there's not really one in Frozen besides like the mountain giants, I would assume. Beauty and the Beast, it's the witch that changes the beast into the beast. He was a prince. In Lion King, it was Scar. In the Lorax, it's the Onceler. I believe his name is the Onceler. Yeah. But you've got a villain in almost every story, and they're usually a magical villain too. So that's a fairy tale. Here's some sentence stems you might use. A lot of fairy tales have once upon a time. That's kind of its start. Once upon a time there was a blank who blank. So for example, once upon a time there was a dragon there was a girl who was a dragon. There's an example. One day, blank happened and it was bad because the big bad blank decided to, and they all lived happily ever after. Those are like very common sentences you can use in your writing. So those are some elements about fantasy that makes it different than realistic fiction. Now, here are some examples of realistic fiction. Because of Winn-Dixie, some of you have watched this show in the middle. It's Bunked. It's from Disney Channel. That's realistic fiction as well. Those characters are just actors. They're not actually real. And then Judy Moody's realistic fiction. The reason why all three of these they're in the same genre is because they have things that are in common as well. For one, they all have a person who is the character. In Judy Moody, it's Judy Moody. And because of Winn-Dixie, it's Opal. In Bunked, I have not watched that show very much, but there's always like a main character. And they always have a real problem that you might go through as well. For example, bad grades. That's a problem, you know? Like Judy Moody. Judy Moody goes to college. Her problem was that she was getting bad grades and she had to get a tutor. So one solution to that might be to get a tutor or to study. And you always remember, you have to solve your problem. And lastly, usually the character learns a really valuable lesson that the reader also might learn. So in this case, you know, if let's say Stink's getting bad grades, that's his problem. He solves it by studying more. And the theme is you've got to work harder to get the things you want. So those are just some examples of the things that realistic fiction have. And some sentence stems you might use and you might notice a pattern in this. There was a blank named blank. There was a girl named Juniper. They wanted but, so then they learned. It might sound like your normal retell. Somebody wanted but, so then, and then your lesson. So as you can see, these two genres are very different, but they also have some things in common. So when you're working on yours, you might decide which one you're going to choose, fantasy or fiction, okay? So fantasy with magic and talking animals, or fiction, realistic fiction, which is more like what happens between us, what happens to us. All right, so I wish you luck and I miss you all, and I hope that you have a great week. Bye.